Hey, welcome. What's up? Welcome to Kettlebell Corner with Iron Revival, Coach Jeremiah Whalen and Coach Roger Parks. And today, special guest, athlete trainer extraordinaire, kettlebell coach. He'll run kettlebell certifications in the rain. He don't even care. We got Hunter Crine right here with us. What's up, brother?
What's up, everybody? It's good to be here, guys. I'm excited to chop it up a little bit, and let's get to it.
Yeah. If you want to give us 15 seconds about yourself and maybe just drop a spot on Instagram where people can find you, and we'll dive right in. Roger's got some great questions he's ready to throw out.
Man, all right, 15-second version. So I'm a strength coach in New York. I work with people of all ages and teach them how to get strong and conquer fear with the kettlebell. You can find me on Instagram at Hunter Crine. I'm looking forward to talking with all y'all today.
That works. Excellent. All right. Well, we see you training with a lot of athletic type performance and stuff like that, getting your 400s in and a lot of athletic elements to your training. And we noticed you like jumping. How similar do you think kettlebells are to plyometrics and for what you do?
So I was introduced probably 2 years ago to Coach Darius, who's a master RKC, and he uses the kettlebell specifically to train youth athletes in a way I'd never seen it before. So there's a lot of Olympic lifting with it, but all of the kettlebell movements are used to create force vectors, that mimic something you would do athletically. So to answer the question, doing things, greasing grooves of jumping with the kettlebell is something that we do, and something that we not only teach people how to jump, but we teach them how to land with. And we like to do it with youth athletes all the way up to, general population and everything in between.
So let's go off of that. So you're working on the jump now. How would you use a kettlebell, or why would you use a kettlebell as opposed to actually jumping? What's the relationship there?
So we actually jump too. There's absolutely pre-plyometric and plyometric parts of the workout, but we'll mimic that. So here's an example. So if I'm going to teach somebody how to get a max vertical jump, or that's something I'm working on, I can use a push press, a very overloaded, push press to grease that same thing, teach them how to put force in the ground and go up with maximum force. So what I was saying is that I'll use that, developing that force in that same vector to also improve performance on that vertical jump. It's not that they won't actually vertical jump as well in session with their body weight, but we use the kettlebell the same way somebody else may use a barbell, to get the Olympic lifts in, and do things that mimic that same kind of jump.
So am I hearing you correctly? Then you'll use the kettlebell more to increase capacity, or is it more just warming people up and getting them ready to jump?
Force production.
Okay.
So teaching them not only how to produce force. So if I show you, if I go a push press, I'm like, boom, my heels come up, right? I'm teaching them how to put their foot into the ground and produce force up. Then when I'm having them here and I let it fall and I catch it into a soft knee, I mimic the landing out of the same jump. So it's teaching them, how to use that, implement how to produce force with it, put their feet into the ground, and improve the performance on the jump.
Okay. So you're letting the kettlebell teach them some lessons.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Very, very solid. No, let's talk a little bit about trajectory, because one thing that's very evident to anyone who scrolls through your page, has seen anything you do, you play with trajectories that a lot of kettlebell coaches don't. It's actually something Rich mentioned when he was on, that he had a little bit of he had to get his head around going a little more vertical. Yeah. I would say that strength and conditioning in general, and especially kettlebells, really favors horizontal force production. It's all about deadlifting. It's all about swinging, blah, 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 blah. Everything's got to be a hinge. It's the most powerful shape on the planet. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think it requires a supplement? Do you think they have it wrong? Because we have some ideas about this too, but we want to know.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong. Meaning, like, I think that you need to be able to do both. You need to be able to produce force that way, but you also need to produce force that way. And so ultimately, if you look at an athletic base position, just a linebacker, somebody on a field, they usually have positive shin angles. Because if you want to go that way and you want to sprint, you need a positive shin. Most people that swing kettlebells super horizontally, it's vertical shin only, and it's super high hinged, and it doesn't actually mimic what an athletic base position is. So the answer is that you need to do both, and you need to understand why. So if I'm trying to produce force up, my hips need to be lower, and I need to be under that kettlebell, and I need to be able to send it straight up. My heels are going to raise a little bit. Most people don't ever train a heel coming up in the kettlebell movement because we've been told dogmatically you can't do it, right? The heels have to stay down. Why? Right? If you Olympic lift maximally to produce force vertically, your heels come up, right? So in the same token, if I want to produce force that way maximally, my heels are going to stay down, so I can get a higher hinge, more hips behind it, and the force goes that way. So to answer the question, I think you need to be able to train both force vectors and understand why and why you're trying to produce force that way versus always having the heels on the ground, always having the hips high, and high hinging mostly everything is my own personal opinion.
So if I'm using my active listening correctly, you're training the athlete in front of you to accomplish the goal that's relevant, rather than just blindly doing what you've been taught to do.
That's right.
Imagine that.
Hey,
I think
well, I
that's
bet that
awesome.
works out pretty well. You know,
A point of clarification, just for people who don't know what this means. Can you do a quick explanation of a positive shin angle? Why
Yeah, and I
that's
can
important?
show you. So right here, if I want to accelerate, so any sprinter knows if I want to go this way, my shin needs to be positive. Because when I go to run, I'm going to produce force here. If it's vertical and I go to sprint out of this position, I'm going to go here. A vertical shin, if I go to sprint and it stays vertical and I can't get here, I'm going to go up. So that's what you're going to see, a vertical shin where you're going to be in a swing right here, or more hinge dominance, more posterior chain, right? A positive shin is going to be here, a vertical shin is going to be here. All right.
Perfect.
So if I want to be able to produce force and translate it to being able to sprint and be able to go and be athletic, I need to be able to get into positive shins. And I need to train that.
So, and a lot of the stuff that we train is, we like to find some of the physics and the things that underpin why these things work. And for people who kind of followed our stuff, something to really get, once you get that positive shin angle, you have a shifting of center mass. If you're looking at balance, center of mass over base of support, you're moving that center of mass toward the edge of the base of support. The more centered your center of mass is in the center of that base, the more stable you're going to be. But if you're more stable, that means your inertia is higher. You're less likely to move, and if you're getting ready to move quickly, you're not going to do it. You've got to shift your center toward that edge. And whether you're sprinting, whether you're grappling, a lot of being athletic is kind of living on that edge and making sure that you know how to shift your weight. And a positive shin angle is super, super important for that. So thanks for that. So I think that's awesome. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense to work with people where they are. When you're looking at people on the field in particular, it's very rare. It's very rare that you're going to see someone with that kind of hips back, completely vertical shin position. I honestly can't think of, other than maybe sumo wrestling, but I don't know. I can't think of a time when we really see that. Not even in football. I don't see those vertical shins. So super, super important there. You got anything now, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I think with athletics, and you're training a lot of young people, so I don't know. I guess maybe it's probably easier to get young people acclimated to kettlebells as opposed to like a barbell where it's so fixed, and kettlebell can be a little bit more fluid to them and acquiring, that proprioception in their body. What are some of the kettlebell skills that you are teaching these young athletes when they come in like that stand out to you and are always like go to, and why are you teaching them these things to translate to their athletic development?
Honestly, whether it's like a kid or an adult, I kind of train them the same way. Like, I think there's a continuum to learning this kind of stuff. And I don't really differentiate. I think the kettlebell is great for everybody because what you said, it teaches coordination, right? There's a lot of, you can't really measure coordination, but being able to clean a kettlebell and absorb it and swing it and change directions with it, there's a lot of things you gain from that. So I guess going back to the original question, I'm always going to start somebody, you have to learn how to deadlift and squat and do very basic things. How do you hinge your hips? How do you squat? How do you do those kinds of things? And then we work them up. You learn the swing first. I always teach the vertical clean and the vertical snatch before I ever teach a horizontal, just because it's hard for people to learn how to swing something and then take it vertically versus just taking it vertically. That's something that if you're a coach and you don't do, it's an easy way to get by. And you can take somebody on the first day usually and get them to do a dead snatch. It's really like, if you just go straight up with your heels and just say, punch this overhead, you can usually get that in an hour. So movements that I really want to see people be able to do, I want a deadlift, I want a squat, I want these, specifically kids, I want to teach them how to, produce some force with the swing, and then we kind of go from there. In a continuum, I'm sure, as you guys have learned, from, easy to more difficult.
Yeah, your vertical clean and vertical snatch, and that's for, like, I don't know, generally layman's term is like you got your dead clean or dead snatch in that essence. And I think that's pretty important. And you've mentioned a couple of times now, as far as like, getting that power and having the heels come up, and that's okay, especially in moves like that where you really got to get that power driving from the ground, especially from the bottom. Are your cleans, you're starting them with the 2-hand clean and then
Yeah.
single arm cleans? What
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what this is literally my favorite thing to do if I have somebody the first time. So I'll do a 2-hand deadlift. I'll do a 2-hand dead clean. I'll do a 2-hand dead stop swing. And then I'll do a single arm deadlift, single arm dead stop clean. It's just like a single arm swing. So you're teaching them how to use the bell with the same arm, and you're just progressing it, based on how far they have to move the bell. And then finally it goes up overhead. But to answer the question, and I think you people got to see this, if something starts underneath me, I'm going to be here. It's going to be against the inside of my ankles, and I'm going to sink my hips lower because I'm trying to produce the force up. So as I'm here, if it's dead, I go up, my heels are going to raise as I come up. If the same skill is a horizontal skill, it's going to be in front of me, my hips are going to be back, I'm going to be more vertical, and I could do the same skill from here, but now my goal is to push the force this way. So that's the difference between the vertical and the horizontal skills. And I'm going to teach usually the vertical, going up first.
Kind of a follow-up there. So am I correct? Are you still both Strong First and RKC certified?
Yeah, I'm Strong First level 2 and RKC level 1. I'll probably do level 2 there.
Okay. Now, do you find, because I in looking through videos, books, research, etc., I have encountered more vertical work in RKC. That's just, is that me, or does RKC have more tolerance, or do they teach vertical more than Strong First tends to?
That's a good question. I personally got linked up with Coach Darius, and nobody trains kettlebells that I've ever seen like he does. It's kind of a Cal Dietz triphasic system meets vertical force production and athletic performance all in one. And I think it was because he was using them to train athletes. So it was like teaching kids how to Olympic lift. Like, most coaches will say, I don't care who you are, just get better at teaching it. It's challenging and there's risk there. I'm not saying you can't do it, but with a kettlebell, like, you can do it on day one.
Yeah.
So I think those principles kind of got mixed in, and why they've kind of found their way into the RKC. As far as anybody else doing it, I'm not really sure. I just know that's what I've seen in the RKC.
Got it. That's fair. Now, what are your thoughts on a squatty swing? A thing, not a thing? Is it going to make your back explode?
No, that's a great.
Is going to die?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. Me and Rich filmed like videos on this yesterday. I personally, like, I always revert back to the athletic position I was talking about, and being able to absorb force with the hips. So I see people with really high hinges, and usually the head dives, and it's a really unstable position where I wouldn't want to absorb force. So I don't want the knees to be super positive, like super positive shin angle, but I'm always going to coach somebody when they swing to let their knees bend as they need. And we kind of find the position where they're able to absorb better. But I like the chest above the hips. You know, that's what I'll tell you, is when I'm in a position like that, that's what I like personally.
So I like that. There's a lot of, I think this is one of the biggest pieces of dogma that I would really prefer die, that a swing needs to be a particular way, that it needs to look like a hinge. And the corollary of that, a lot of coaches teach this, which it's fundamentally absurd. It is, I will say, borderline stupid. That as soon as you get into a squatty swing, you're going to hurt your back. It's absolutely preposterous. There are so many. I mean, one, to link a movement to injury has not been very effectively done to begin with anyway. But there's so many factors with force production and force absorption. You know, you have a coach that kind of pantomimes this awful squat swing on YouTube, and it's like, oh, this is going to hurt your back. Of course it's going to hurt your back, because you're intentionally doing something stupid. You know, the arms are away from the body. When you look at the rules of momentum, force absorption, force production, those are the things that are either going to protect or preserve you. It's not about the angle. It's not about the angle. And, you know, one of my favorite things is if you I don't know if you've looked through the kettlebell research, but there's not all that much of it. But one of the papers that I especially hear a lot in Strong First is they talk about Stu Mcgill and his swing study. And Stu pointed out that they used a squat style swing. So here is this research paper that kind of indicates kettlebell swings and says, hey, these will not blow up your back. Stu Mcgill, you know, one of the most conservative back guys in the history of everything, is saying this. But he used a squat style swing in order to prove it. So I just wanted to kind of get another take on that. And that's what I think is important. You know, you mentioned force production, force absorption, and I think that's really solid stuff.
So this is where my other mentor comes in, who's also a mentor of Darius's, who's located in Maryland. His name's Marty Gallagher, and he's trained SEAL Team 6. He's trained Ed Cohn. You know, he's trained Kurt Kowalski, guys who can pick up, you know, 800 off the floor, squat 1,000. And the way that they teach how to deadlift, so the spines in one. Is it cool if I show stuff? Like, is that?
Yeah, this is a video. It's going on YouTube.
So, you know, the way he teaches people how to deadlift, it's unlike, you know, a lot of ways people deadlift with high hips. But he talks about this concept of not making the spine derrick and using the quads to pick the bar off the floor and keeping a high hip hinge in reserve. So what that means is the deadlift position is lower. So I'm here and I'll break the bar and I use my quads to pick it off the floor before saving my hip hinge and firing the hip hinge high. So he talks about the quads, not the hamstrings or the glutes, he says it just like this. He says, you need monster quads to be a strong man. And what that means is that the quads are actually something that we're looking for to spare the back. So if I use a kind of squatty or hinge, and I don't know how squatty people are talking about, if I can just show it, like, I'm not talking about like going down. My pelvis is not traveling down, right? It's traveling back, and I'm just bending my knees a little bit more than being here. Like, it's not like I'm going down with my pelvis if that's a squatty swing. It's just here, I'm pulling it. So you can see, look where my chest is in relation to my hips. Like, does that look better for my back or does this? You know what I'm saying? Just
Option one.
yeah. So I'm just saying, like, look at it. Like, I don't know the fucking physics, but I know if I look at it and I pull it and I use my quads and I'm ready to push through my fucking feet, like now we're ready to go. Okay. Also here, I have no way to push through my feet. There's no way. I'm usually pulled back into my heels versus being more vertical. And look, I look like a linebacker, right? So that's to answer the question. I want to use my quads, and most people have no quads. You put somebody in a split squat and say, hold this, they look like a willow tree in the wind in like 5 seconds. Okay, so nobody really has quads. And so I don't understand, like, if you can pull the kettlebell back, load the quads, use the quads, hip flexors, the glutes, and everything together versus just relying on the back of your legs, you're going to be better off. You know, in my opinion, I think you should let it go where you want to let it go, as far as where that position may be different for other people. But option two, you know, with those hips super high, never really looks good or spine sparing, in my opinion.
No,
Yeah, I think we agree with that
there.
as well. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no doubt about it. And like to that sentiment, there's no way that, like, if you are emphasizing like that force down through the ground and really focusing on your feet, really doing the work, you're gonna have to recruit some quad. Like you said, like if you're just back in your heels and your hips are just the main driver and you're not using those quads, you're missing a lot of opportunity to gain some more power. And that's something that we also agree with, as far as the legs being the main driver in these ballistic kettlebell skills and of that sort. Whether your push press brings your heels off the ground or not, maybe you are able to do enough force without it, but we certainly don't want to restrict you if you do need to do something like that as well. So
absolutely. And honestly, like that's what I think is the most that's when somebody talks in absolutist terms in anything, not just training in life, that's when you kind of need to run away. Like, this movement thing is, there's so much gray area. Our bodies are different, our injury histories, our goals, like the positions need to change to mimic that. And we're just trying to figure out what the guardrails are for what we should, you know, advise people. So it's great to be around people that aren't super dogmatic in that way.
I read an interesting piece, and I wish I could remember where I found it. It was borderline internet rant, but the piece was talking about, it was actually in relation to Tom Purvis's work, and I don't know if you've checked out his stuff, but Tom Purvis is pretty awesome. He really gets into a lot of physics, anthropometrics, and he's basically talking about how certain people have to move a certain way. Certain people do not have different movement options just because of the finite length of our bones. And someone was talking specifically about the different kettlebell masters and looking at body types, which ties into an article Brett Jones wrote. Is a push or is a swing a push or a pull? And it's largely going to come down to your body type. And a lot of people who have really perpetuated the kettlebell dogma really don't have a choice but to have kind of that really hip dominant swing based on the way they're built. If you've got a short torso, you've got long femurs, short tibias, you're not great at putting force into the ground. You might be great at driving forward, but you're not great at going straight up. That's just not what you're built to do. So, of course they're going to favor that type of swing. It's really neat stuff to look into. But anthropometry. Now, have you spent much time looking into that as it relates to, let's say individualizing your skills to a particular athlete? Like, hey, you need to swing here and you need to swing there.
Well, so I had a new client today, just as an example, who I saw for the first time last week, and she's asking me all these questions, and I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. You know what I mean? Try it this way, try it that way. And I think it comes down to just being humble enough to just be like, maybe I don't know all the answers in regards to what works for me or what I've seen work, but let's see what works for you. And so I don't have, like, you walk through the door and I'm like, oh, short femurs, you're going to swing like this. You know what I mean? I'm not that experience level yet.
For sure.
But I do know that, putting somebody in that scenario, I'm willing to, like, step back and be like, hey, that looked better than that. How did it feel? If it feels good, usually it's good. You know what I mean? And so That's the thing. I'm going to give suggestions. You know what I mean? Like if you hike a kettlebell and your ass goes through the ceiling, like I'm like, hey, look, like it feels good. You know, like it may feel good, you know. So, but yeah, I think that's a good question. And one of the things that I have heard, which really got my brain going, was somebody, you know, talking about, you know, what your nationality is, your heritage, and it having to do with what your pelvis is shaped like. And maybe if you have an Eastern European hit, you know, you're going to be better at squatting, or, you know, I forget the exact what it was, but, you know, instead of jamming people into context maybe they can't handle, maybe it's, you know, it's good to sample a few and, you know, be willing to experiment with them.
Yeah, I think that was I believe that was some of Mcgill's stuff as well. I believe that was Stu McGill. If anybody wants to search some of these topics, but it really is neat when you look at, you know, shapes and you know what your natural restrictions are. And one thing I found is the people who are the best in this business are really variable. And the answer to almost every question is it depends. So we're big fans of it depends, especially me.
Yeah, and as we age, you're going to be even bigger fan of it. You know, that was low hanging fruit. So, but maybe I get Hunter to spit his water out. Damn.
Almost.
Let's talk a little bit about volume in training. You know, what are your thoughts? How are you varying your volume, especially for athletes and things of that matter, new experience, whatnot?
It depends. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
perfect. You can't even write that shit.
No, I think something that gets lost in the high intensity training society we're in is lowering volume and ratcheting intensity. So that's another thing I learned from Darius is, like, you know, a lot of the reps are 1, 2s, and 3s, but they're done with absolute intensity. And you may hold that kettlebell for 10 seconds here. You may hold it here. Like, you may march with it. It's different context with lower repetitions with a focus on mastery, you know, or not mastery, but making sure that before you do 100 reps, 5 look good. And this is if you ever messed with a push band before. If you haven't, buy one and mess with it. But if you use a push band, you know, it literally tells you it goes right here. You'll do a kettlebell swing, it'll tell you how fast it goes. You'll do a set of 5 and you'll see how much power drops down over that set. And usually by rep 3 or 4, you're down 18. Once it gets over 20, you're not training power anymore. So if you want to be able to, you know, not only train with good skills, but generate power, you can't do that really over 5. You know what I'm saying? I would argue. And you don't really need a push band. You can just watch somebody swing. They start to really tail off. So I like to train intensity for sure, you know, lower reps with intensity. But that said, early in a program with a beginner, they need volume, right? You have to build the tissue to be able to generate the intensity. And I think that's really important now after COVID. So you see everybody coming out of their houses and trying to go and hit powerful kettlebell swings, or you want to jam them into these kettlebell skills. They should spend 3 months bodybuilding, really. You know what I mean? To build some tissue, some work capacity. So if I get a new athlete, they're going to do a little bit more volume to build the hypertrophy and work capacity so they can recover, and then give me some intensity when we need it. But I also, you know, I'm going to teach them skills with a little bit lower reps, a little bit higher intensity. So they don't do 100 really raggedy ones and then, you know, some hurts, or the skill ultimately gets burnt in, not looking that good, if that makes sense.
Will you use the kettlebell as primarily an endurance training tool at any point with any athletes?
Absolutely. So I also prep people for, you know, certifications. And when you're prepping for a certification, look, it's a volume test, right? And
Sure.
so, you know, for them, like, I'm going to probably cut the athletic performance stuff down a lot because it's a snatch test. So, and it's a skill test. So we're going to do snatches and skills. You know what I'm saying? And so we will use that, you know, with athletes, particularly the kettlebell, it's a repeated power tool. Right. So this is one thing that I don't think people really grasp is, like, if I can improve my, you know, if I can go out on the track and improve my 40 time, I'm probably going to become a better distance runner. So if I sprint a lot and I become like a Lamborghini and revving at like 100 mile an hour out of my 200 mile an hour tank now, it's not that hard for me. But if my top end speed's like 120 and distance running is like 100, it's harder. So the answer is I'll just do repeated power with them versus doing 10 swings. I'll just do 8 sets of 3 really fast, powerful ones and make them rev fast and build an engine. And then a set of 10, 20 is not that hard. You know, and I think that to chase endurance, you don't necessarily need to do more. You may need to do less, and you may need to move it faster.
No, so speaking, you brought up the snatch test. Do you have a preferred method? Because I mean, everybody who's ever even thought about one of these certs is fascinated with the snatch test. Do you have a preferred method?
Brett Jones, man, just Google snatch
SFG prep 1.
You gotta fuck with it a little bit. I don't know if 200 swings in 10 minutes is that's a little like that's what the program ramps you to. But I'll tell you that program, it's some variation of that because it's so well done. And that's the preferred method. But again, it changes for everybody, meaning you could get somebody in a 12-week prep, and it's not really the mark of a good coach when you have a plan. It's like, how good's your plan G? You know what I'm saying? I think I got that from Fred Duncan. It's like everybody has a plan A, but then like what happens when you got to go to plan F? You know, it's like, so you got to figure out when people aren't hitting their numbers or aren't recovering, you know, what do you do then? So I think that's, in order to get there, you have to prep yourself. And this is another thing, by the way, this is not a popular opinion. If you're a kettlebell coach, you should be able to do a snatch test any goddamn day of the week. Okay. Like somebody should call on you, say, give me a snatch test, do it. So if you can't, you better prep yourself so you can. Anyway, that's how you learn, by keeping yourself in that shape and figuring out if you're not and you're a little soft between the midsection, how to get there. I'm looking at you, Rich. Anyway.
Hey, you don't got to get ready if you stay ready, they say, yeah, right?
That's it. Stay strapped, dude. That's it. And you also gain experience by just helping other people get there. What is your plan going to change to, and how do you do that? So I think the preferred method changes, but look, that literature on people that have done it and consistently done it, like Brett, I'm going to steal shit from them all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
solid. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's a good guy to learn from. I had a question about like maximum, and like, let's just take the press for example. Are you taking your athletes through like maximum presses to determine, like, you know, maybe their volume range for their programs or plans, or are you not even getting into that territory with most people?
Dude, look, you have never seen a spine look more like a fishing rod than you have with young kids trying to press kettlebells, right? So those kids try, like, it's absolute strength is a tough quality for kids, for sure. And that's why we, you know, like a great exercise we use for them is like they'll push press it up because they can use their legs. They just don't have the structural integrity yet to really transfer it. So for them, they'll work on a lot of eccentrics, a lot of push pressing, and we may give them some higher volume pressing, but we never really like 1 RM a strict press with them. You know, we may let them rip it on a push press because they have their legs, but you know, that's not something I necessarily work with them. Now, like somebody who comes in and is like, I want to bring my press up. Again, I think Strong First does a really good job with their press program, and just the concept that I always tell myself I learned from doing that press program is none of those presses are really ever over 70%. Right. So, you know, you test them at 80, 90 every once in a while, but a lot of the training comes at 70. And I think a lot of people with the press, they plateau and they're like, okay, they train for a week with probably heavier than they should, and they do, you know, low reps, and they try to retest it, and that plateau is just blazoned into their head versus putting in some volume with a lower load, 60, 70%, and just building the structure and the tissue. So if I was going to train a press, I would do that. I would do different variations. Look, this is my shit, by the way. If you don't do this, do it. Okay, this. All right, this is how I envision a strict press. It's actually on one leg. When I clean this, I shift here. I create a post. Do some of these. So different contexts. Obviously, the Z press, like people know. So some offset presses maybe, so your ribs are down. Some seesaws, like, so you have variation you can train too. And I think that's something that goes beyond just the percentage, because I think the percentage is important, but also different contexts help. kind of bridge the gap as well.
So I believe that's the second time you've mentioned tissue prep, at least the second time. So this is an idea that I think probably gets lost. So you think that's pretty important to make sure your tissues are ready for the work ahead?
Dude, I'm honestly, I mean, I was becoming pretty dogmatic with what I was doing for a while. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I pretty much was like, I love this shit. It's fun. The kettlebell is like sports perform, like all this stuff. And then, you know, you get some clients who are like, you know, they can't get the skills or whatever. And so you're trying to coach it differently. And then you kind of come to this epiphany, like, do they even have the strength to do this? You know what I'm saying? Like, do they even have the tissue to perform the skill I'm asking them? And you can see this in young kids when you ask them to sprint. Like, there's just no push into the ground. I can cue Timmy, send him to a skills coach, a sprint coach, like, oh, so just get your arms like this. It turns out he just needs to go through puberty and get stronger. So a lot of these people, you know, in the general population, like, we've demonized bodybuilding so much in higher rep ranges and doing non-functional shit that actually gets you stronger. If you have more muscle mass, we're talking about physics, if you have more mass, it's force. You know what I'm saying? Mass times acceleration. So if you have no mass and you have no acceleration, you got no force. So how the fuck are you gonna use kettlebells? You know what I'm saying? It's like when we're trying to produce force. So I think if you build the mass a little bit and you create tissue, it doesn't have to be like, I need huge biceps. Like, it's not like that. It's just like, hey, if Timmy can't do a push-up, that's a problem. You can hire whatever pitching coach you want for him to throw more, throw faster, but get him a jump rope and have him do some push-ups. You know, that's the tissue prep kind of thing. Build the ankles, build the foot, build the muscle, build the, you know, the skeleton of the person.
Well, hopefully I go through puberty soon because I want to start pressing some kettlebells. Now you mentioned this is one of my hot button issues. Are you a guy that believes in throwing around the term like functional? That's functional. That's not functional. You think that's all a bunch of nonsense? Do you think there is a realm of acceptable things versus unacceptable things? Is that me or is that him? Okay, there.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I got you.
I was like, wow, he's very stoic.
I was like, shit, this is gonna be a tough question. I'm running away.
Fuck this guy. I'm out of here.
Yeah, a piece.
I think it was like you were gonna ask me if I like say functional fitness.
Are there things that you think are okay to do versus not okay to do, or are you like whatever gets the job done kind of guy?
I think if you can explain why, you know what I mean, that's really what I'm going to judge the content of your coaching and your character on. No, I'm kidding. But like, I'm just going to like, I think you can rationalize anything. I think that the terms though, in this industry have been created to sell products and sell services and have really confused a lot of consumers. So I think people are just confused. I think people don't really know, you know, what they even want anymore or like how to get involved. So I think like you need to know the person in front of you. It's a person.
Come on, Hunter, get it together, man. It's not me this time. I'm happy.
Yeah, it's all good.
There we go. We got you.
All right, I'm just going to go over into this little corner. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, take us wherever you want.
I'm in a tour,
you know?
Yo, but I was just saying, I was like, I don't think, we good?
You're good.
So far.
I'll just, if this keeps fucking up, I'll just restart it and come back in. But ultimately, I think the short answer is no, nothing's like off the table. It depends on the person in front of you. And are you actually listening to the person in front of you? So here's a tidbit for you too. So a lot of it has come down to active listening skills too. Like you don't hear about this at any kettlebell cert, but you get somebody in front of you, you got to figure out what their goals are and why. Somebody comes like, I want to lose weight. Okay, well, why? Well, I want to play with my kids because I feel like I'm not a good dad. Oh shit, that's the real button. So you got to figure out how you're going to make that person relate to their goal and get them better. And a lot of things can do that. There's not any right answer. But if you start jamming, well, I'm the functional fitness guy. He's like, I don't fucking care. I just want to play with my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
So I think that's what's happened in this industry is a lot of people have created terms and created things that people don't even need. And I think if we're good listeners and we understand who's in front of us, we can create solutions for them to improve their quality of life. And if it's with a kettlebell, I personally love that shit because I've seen more people have epiphanies with it than anything else. Because when you use a barbell or dumbbells, it's like, what the fuck am I doing with this? Okay, like, bye. But when you use a kettlebell, it's artistic, man. I'm dancing. Catch me in the club later after I swing that thing. I'm telling you, man.
I'll tell you what, it's so functional. I mean, the kettlebell, right? Functional. I just like the tension and relaxation. And that primarily carries over to my real life when I trip over curbs as I'm walking down the street. And I'm able to catch myself because I'm used to that tension and relaxation aspect that I get from the kettlebell training. And simply put, I think that's right in line. You can feel like an athlete with kettlebells. You learn skills with kettlebells as opposed to, whatever's clever. All right. It's what it's about.
Yeah, man. And like, honestly, I've been in so many gyms and I've trained next to so many people. And it's like the kettlebell teaches you how to move. You know what I'm saying? Like it teaches you how to move in a way. If I have to absorb this and swing this, and then I'm going to do an A skip, and then I'm going to jump. And then like, you're actually creating a mover versus somebody who's a gerbil that needs a gym. COVID taught us, like, you don't need a fucking gym. Take this kettlebell outside and use it. So you're not only independent, but now you know that you can move. Holy shit. Like, you don't even need me anymore. You know what I mean? That's bad. And that's honestly the mark if I did my job. If you don't need me, you know what I'm saying? Then I created somebody that is bulletproof enough to go out there and create a lifestyle change. That's fucking hard. Okay. That's what's hard to do. It's not hard to need a personal trainer. It's not hard to train somebody for 5 years, even though I still have clients who won't leave me alone or like, I'm like, dude, just go. You know what I mean? Obviously we love our clients and we like to be with them, but now the idea is how do we get them out functioning on their own? And that's the question, I think, of what I do for a living and what drives me to do this every day.
You want to open it up to questions now?
Yeah, I think this is a good point. Well, anybody have any questions for Hunter? And, you can even ask about stuff we've talked about or some things you've seen on some of his posts or things like that.
Richie, let's go. What you got, bro?
Come on, Rich. You got a question.
Yo, where'd you find that tight ass shirt?
Oh, it ain't even tight though, dude. It's baggy. This shit was stretched out in my backpack in my workout yesterday. Yeah. Next question.
Hey, Hunter, how do you like to judge if somebody's progressing? Do you do it just by sheer volume, or do you usually have like a certain 3-rep max for an exercise that you do?
Dude, that's a great question, man. It's a really, really good question, especially in New York. So most of the people I work with are like stressed out, people who travel all the time. And so for the longest, I tried to have programs like, we're going to retest this and we're going to do this. And I want to see your numbers. And then, dude, it's so fluid, their schedules. And then, COVID happened and it was like virtual. And it's like, holy shit. Now we have very lightweights. We might not have anything. So to answer your question, I think like you pick some things and, you may just be like, hey, this is what we're going to test in these 3 months and create a goal with them if they're interested in that. But if they're not interested in that, you judge it based on, if they're getting better and if they feel good. Most people, I ask, like, I deal with a lot of people in pain too. So that's another measuring stick is like, okay, I came with you with foot pain. I have no foot pain anymore. All right, perfect. We progressed. But I think that's up to the individual coach, and the people that you're working with. But I don't think there's any really right way. But a quote that I love by Eric Cressy is, nobody gives a shit how much you put on their bench press. They just care how you made them feel. And that's one that kind of stuck with me, and that, not to get like, soft about it. But I mean, it's like, it's important to make sure that people care. They feel like they're progressing towards their goals. And if they are, then it's a success. And if they're like, hey, I want to be able to press the beast. Okay, well, now we need to start to track some numbers because your goal is a performance goal. If it's not like that, then you got to come up with some measures that they give a shit about,
Yeah, I think that's right on too. I mean, and it's been a common theme throughout this conversation today, is just like, it's each person is their individual person, and this is their thing. I've seen a lot of people come through and, maybe their goal was very superficial, and they start working with kettlebells and they start to see like people doing cool stuff with them, and then their goals kind of morph and sort of that thing. And the real important thing to remember, especially as we, if you train adults and anybody really, like, their life isn't training. If you're a pro athlete, your life is training. So it's easy to set those standardable. I don't even think that's a word. Roger, help me. Okay.
Standardized?
Standardized. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Well, you'll see that I got my own language. It works out in the end. But like standardized, checkpoints for you to hit off of. It's a person thing. It's a person game. No matter what, this is always going to be a person game, and that's the beauty part about the kettlebell. Like Hunter said earlier, get outside, take it where you can, fit it in. I've been on plenty of vacations with my kettlebell, and it never disappoints. Anybody else? What else we got out there?
Rich,
what are some goals you have? So obviously I know how hard you work, but when it comes to your own personal training, I know you get in when you can, but talk to me about that.
Yo, so this is new. It's actually started this week. My goal for the year was to start a martial art. And so I'm going to start jujitsu next Monday. And the reason is because I've recently, as I think Jeremiah said, I really started to understand the power. I always thought that the power of the kettlebell was the hard breath and the force production, but it actually turns out the key to life may be the relaxation. So when you're in the key to the kettlebell skills, maybe the relaxation too, like, yeah, can you produce force, but can you just chill and be patient? And I think the martial art for me is going to open up a new realm of like, okay, I'm getting bodied by somebody. Like, what am I about to do? And teach me some new shit, and also fucking check my ego a little bit and make me, a student again. Because that's also a thing I think is like, when people I don't think people mean to get dogmatic. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they do. I don't know. I'm not going to say that. But I think when you're high on your own supply all the time and you never really get checked because you're so good at shit that you forget what it's to be like a student, and your ego runs wild. So to answer the question, I'm going to do a martial art and see how that goes, and probably dial the training back to keep me strong enough for that. And yeah.
Oh, that's dope, man.
very cool. We got anything else?
Yeah, what's the martial art you're doing?
Jiu-jitsu, man. I don't that's the thing too. How do you pick one? Like, I know one of my boys does jiu-jitsu, so I'm like, oh man, I'll come through. He's been like on my ass about it. But
Where are you going?
What's that?
Where are you going?
I think it's on 14th and 5th. Are you familiar with New York at all?
I'm familiar with some of the gyms there, yeah.
Let me ask. I can ask him and answer that. I think he's over to me.
All right. It's a fun journey, man. Just enjoy it.
Dude, it's gonna be some shit.
Yeah, and that being said, like, kettlebell is an excellent complement to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically. I feel like, and just its preparation for joints and those movements and the freedom of movement and things of that nature. As somebody who has done martial arts, I definitely feel one of the benefits of kettlebell is that it feels like a martial art in that skill development and just in the little intricacies of it all. And and I have never done jiu-jitsu, but I wrestled for, I don't know, like 12 years or something like that. And there's always breakthrough moments, and you feel good about it. It's the same as any training and whatever. I think that's a pretty solid thing. I love saying being a student again. I like that you frame yourself and you're going in there with this mindset of beginner. And I think anybody that joins any kind of training program, whether it's martial arts or your kettlebells or whatnot, take a beginner approach. No matter how good you are, you're gonna come across somebody that knows more or gets better. And I think with that being said, I think it's a good spot to call it. And Hunter, I want to just thank you for coming in and sharing a little bit about how you train people with kettlebells, what your thoughts are on kettlebells, the why. I love that. You know, Roger and I are all about it. And Roger, you got anything else for Hunter before we head?
No, I didn't hate this at all.
All right, well, that's good. You know, and we must see TV. All right, in between the Olympics, you catch it. Hunter, you got any party messages for the people?
Yo, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you and what you guys are all doing. I met Coach Susie under a sanitation bridge swinging kettlebells in New York, and she's fucking great. And I knew that you guys are going to be great people too. So I appreciate you for having me. And let's keep making this community better, man, because, you know, it's up to us to kind of, in an industry that's kind of going all over the place, deliver good, sound information that can help people get better. So I'm on that front, and I'm definitely down to help however I can.
Well, absolutely.
Word.
Anytime you want to come back and join us.
Oh, I would do. I'll be through here, man. Thursdays at 4.
Yeah.
Me and Richie will have a slumber party after.
That's right. Yeah, same room.
It'll be sick.
I love it. I love it. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Kettlebell Corner. This week, our guest was Hunter Crine. And you get at him at all the Instagram, Hunter Crine. You can't miss him. Anyways, stay strong, everybody, and we'll check you next week. Peace.